You've said it 3 times, backed it with data, and your boss still moves on like you said nothing. You're delivering results, showing up in meetings, making smart recommendations, but somehow you're still not being heard. If you've ever wondered why your voice isn't landing, this episode is for you. Today on Leading Women in Tech, we're unpacking a frustration I hear all the time from my clients. My boss doesn't listen to me. And if that's ever been true for you, whether it's in one-on-ones, leadership meetings, or when you speak up with a new idea, please know you're not alone. In this episode, I'm going to break down why being right isn't enough to get buy-in at the executive level, how to shift your communication from tactical to strategic, and what's really going on when your boss seems to ignore you, even when you're delivering results. This is about strategic communication for executives, influence without being aggressive, and the role of our executive presence in whether or not our voice gets heard. Because here's the truth. Being overlooked isn't just frustrating, it's a visibility issue. And visibility is a promotion issue. So if you're feeling stuck in your career, wondering why your ideas aren't gaining traction, or you're still not being invited to key decision-making meetings, this episode is going to give you the tools to start shifting that today. So stick around. In particular, at the end, I'm going to give you some scripts you can try right now today to shift perception and get your voice taken seriously without shouting, overcompensating, or working even harder. So let's dive in. Let's start with the emotional reality of what's going on. You're doing great work. You're speaking up. You're bringing data, logic, and value to the table. And somehow your boss still doesn't hear you. This isn't about your volume. This is not about you being not qualified. And no, you don't need to be a bulldozer to be taken seriously. This is about strategic visibility and how to communicate and how it's interpreted differently based on your role, your presence, and yes, unconscious bias. So let me tell you about Marisol. Let's call her Marisol, one of my clients, a senior engineering manager. So, she's a manager, but she's in a global SaaS company. And she came to me saying, Tony, I've led 3 major product launches in 18 months. I fixed cross-team delivery issues. I've hit every KPI, but in meetings with my VP, so this is her skip level, it's like I'm invisible. I speak, but nothing lands. She assumed she needed to improve her content. That's why she came to me, like, what metrics should I be connecting? I need to improve my decks, more preparation. In fact, she came to me spending hours on presentations, staying up late at night, doing this, and still nothing was shifting. And she was like, I just must be doing the wrong thing in these decks. Something needs to shift. What really needed to shift was how she framed her communication. So when we unpacked her interactions, here's the pattern I saw. She was sharing status, she was giving updates, she was asking for resources in a way that sounded like she was requesting permission, not driving outcomes. So what we did was simple but powerful. You can do this right now. We reframed her communication around strategic intent. Stick with me, I'm going to explain this. She shifted from updates into executive level insights. And the reason I picked on Marisol as my example here is because, yes, she's an engineering manager. She's not an executive. And yet, executive level insights were the thing that got traction. We practiced communicating like a peer, role played this in coaching sessions, instead of being a service provider. And within 3 weeks, her VP started asking for her opinion in meetings, calling her out and saying, hey, what do you think, Marisol? Her director invited her to more high stakes conversations. At 6 weeks, she was offered the lead on a multi-team initiative that previously she'd been passed over for, and was really pissed off about that, by the way. But she got it. So what's really going on? If you're not being heard, it's not because your ideas aren't good. It's likely because your executive presence isn't being felt. And executive presence isn't about charisma. It's about how your communication is received in the room. Are you signaling confidence under pressure? Strategic thinking versus tactical execution? Peer level decision making? Yes, even with your boss. This is where succinct communication, executive language, and emotional intelligence all come in. So we'll dive into those in just a minute, but first I want you to sit with this. If you're not being heard, it doesn't mean you're not capable. It means it's time to shift how you're communicating your value. If your boss isn't listening, or worse, you're being overlooked in meetings you should be leading, These 3 shifts are going to help you start sounding like a strategic leader that you really are and that you want to be seen as. So here we go. Shift number 1, lead with insight, not information. I promise you, we're going to give you some scripts. We are going to be doing that. So get your pen and paper ready, because the moment you open your mouth in a high stakes meeting, people are evaluating, are they strategic? Are they focused on outcomes? Do they belong at this table? Even if they aren't consciously thinking that, believe me, they are unconsciously assessing you for it. Most high performers default to information sharing, like, we finished testing this new workflow this morning. No. Here's what I want you to reframe it as, because strategic communication flips the order, right? This is what I want you to say instead. The new workflow just improved our error rate by 22%. We're seeing earlier flags on quality issues. Always, always lead with the takeaway, not the timeline. Takeaway, not the timeline. Unless the takeaway is the timeline. That's a caveat for another day, maybe. But ask yourself, what's the value of what I'm sharing, not what I did today? This is not what I did today. If you're a leader, I don't care how junior you are. If you're a team lead, it's your first leadership role. It is never too early to start sharing the value of what you are achieving, what you are working towards, instead of a timeline or the activity. Drop the activity, drop the timeline, unless the timeline is the key thing. What is the value you're bringing to the table? And if you're in the executive team, you still haven't figured that one out, my love, you need to do that yesterday. As an added bonus, this helps you speak less and be heard more. Speaking more doesn't make you friends. You can get a reputation as someone who just likes to talk or who thinks out loud, which isn't executive material. Somebody who thinks out loud, I know you might do it, but I have so many conversations about this. It is too much. Executives are exhausted most of the time, at least many of them. They are already trying to process their own stuff. If you are using the executive room to think out loud, and this includes interviews, it includes with your boss. Once you get up to the director level, you should not be thinking out loud in front of people above you or your peers. In fact, I would argue you should not be thinking out loud. You need another way to deal with that. Some of my clients come to me to think about it, right? You need to be saying exactly what you need to get across, no more, no less. So when you use this tactic of talking about the takeaway, right? Talking about the insight, not the information, you are going to speak less. You're going to ensure that when you are speaking, you really get heard. The second tactic is to position your contributions as business drivers. So stop framing your work as delivering on requirements and start framing it as solving business problems. At the end of the day, if a business could just run, just churn, nobody would need to give updates. We'd automate the hell out of it. Most of us wouldn't have jobs, and if we did, it would just be churning the handle. Like, no. At the end of the day, we're always solving business problems. So instead of we hit the delivery date, notice the timeline in there. Say, this launch gives us a 3-week advantage over our competitors going into Q4. When you use the language of impact, trade-offs, competitive edge, you show that you're already thinking like a VP, even if your title doesn't say it yet. So rewind and write that down. This launch gives us a 3-week advantage of our competitors going into Q4. Find your own version of that. Stop just saying what's happened, okay? Ask yourself, how does this drive revenue, reduce risk, or create future opportunities? That's how to make sure you are speaking of what is driving business, not just completing tasks. The third shift is to focus on making strategic recommendations, not just observations. This is where so many leaders fall down, and they bring up problems, but stop short of offering a recommendation or a point of view. And when they wonder why no one follows up with them, here's why. So instead of, we're seeing a drop in adoption from frontline teams, write this down. Adoption is down, likely due to a lack of training. I recommend we pilot a short video module and measure re-engagement over 2 weeks. This speaks to one of my key mantras: be the solutions person and not the problem person. I wasn't the person that coined that phrase. I don't know where it came from, but it's so important. I talk about it all the time with clients. Because early on in my career, I was taken to one side by a manager saying that I was exhausting to have in the room. That was a shock because all I did was speak up about problems, issues, reasons why we shouldn't do things. It was great and I highlighted things others didn't see. I genuinely thought I was helping, but I was exhausting. Unbeknownst to me, I had a reputation for being exhausting all the time. Not difficult, but someone who, when she opened her mouth, created problems. Today, as CEO, I know how hard it is to balance supporting my team in helping them have a voice with the exhaustion of just getting, we can't because, or having just this big problem. So be the voice that doesn't just see the issue, but moves it forward. That's what your boss wants. That's what gets you noticed. Ask yourself, would an executive know how to take action based on what I just said? Or would they need to ask 3 more questions to get there? Remember, your boss isn't doing your job. And even if they used to do your job, they don't have the current data. You do. So give them solutions and ideas to move forward beyond your identification of the problem. Just as a little segue, if you're finding this episode helpful, can I ask a quick favor? Hit like, subscribe, leave a comment or review. It really helps more amazing women in tech discover this podcast and lets me know what's resonating with you. All right, back to the episode. So if you've implemented these shifts, you're speaking strategically, you're framing your value, and yet maybe you still get dismissed, talked over, ignored. This isn't just frustrating, it's exhausting. I know, I get it. And it chips away at our confidence, our credibility, our career momentum. So let's talk about what to do when it feels systemic. Number 1, recognize the pattern and stop internalizing it. Start by separating your value from their behavior. This isn't necessarily a you problem. Sometimes it's a power dynamic, a perception problem, even a bias problem. So don't jump straight into self-doubt. Instead, ask yourself, has this happened more than once? Is it just with this leader or in multiple settings? Have others noticed this dynamic? Documenting it gives you data, and data gives you clarity on your next move. Number 2, use strategic escalation without burning bridges. You have the right to say, I noticed my input wasn't acknowledged in our last few meetings. Would it be helpful to recap those recommendations in writing? By the way, you can also just recap those recommendations in writing, but you can also enlist allies. Try saying, hey, I brought up that risk flag earlier in the meeting. Can you help reinforce that it's something we need to act on? And here's a top tip. Use email and pre-reads to see your ideas before the meeting. This builds a paper trail and gives you ideas that can surface more, be absorbed faster, gives you more backup. What I would say is if you're seeing this more than once with more than one individual, it's likely you. If it's just one individual, it's likely not you. Obviously, there's a bit of a gray area there, but have a look. Is this happening all the time with lots of people, or is it happening just with one individual? That may give you an insight as to whether there's something that's in your control. Next, have a conversation with your manager. If the pattern is with your direct boss, you might need a respectful, clear conversation. Try something like, I've noticed a few times when my ideas don't seem to land in the room. I'd love your help in understanding how I can communicate more effectively. Framing it as a desire to improve, not a complaint, opens the door. Whether it's your boss or someone else, your boss should be helping you. If your boss is a supportive ally, this creates awareness. If they're not, that's useful data too, right? And then finally, item number 4, know when it's time to reroute. Sometimes you're not being heard because you're in the wrong room, and it's not your fault to fix that system alone. If you've tried the strategic approach, the mindset shifts, the clear communication, and it's still not changing, that's when it might be time for a new role, a new team, a new environment that recognizes your voice and value. You deserve to be in the rooms where your insight is heard, respected, and acted upon. So ask yourself, am I spending more energy trying to prove myself to the wrong people than I am building my vision and value? You don't need to shout to be heard, but you do need to show up on purpose. Remember, your ideas aren't landing. It's not because you're not smart enough, you're not experienced enough, or not working hard enough. In fact, that right there, let me just put a pin in this for a second. Working hard enough. If you aren't being noticed, working harder is not going to help. So let's just let go of that. So many of us burn ourselves out because we think it's on us to work harder and then we'll get noticed. If we work harder, surely they'll pay more attention. Just go back to the story I told you at the beginning about Marisol, who was staying up late at night to work on decks and they still weren't landing. Working harder isn't the thing. Hitting your head against the same brick wall when the brick wall isn't moving isn't going to fix anything. So there's something else going on. Your job is to understand what that is. That is the job of a leader. Understand what's going on, understand what you need to be doing differently. Because somewhere along the way, the perception of your leadership hasn't caught up with the reality of your capability. That's not a reason to overwork. It's a reason to realign. Your voice matters. Your ideas matter. And yes, you deserve to be heard, so don't shrink. Don't wait for someone to notice you. Start shifting how you show up strategically, clearly, and in a way that builds that recognition and influence you deserve. And if you're still tired of doing this alone, this is exactly what I do with my coaching clients. We work together to shift perception, evaluate strategic visibility, build the executive presence that actually gets you promoted. So if you want some help with this, book a free complimentary strategies call with me at tonycollis.com/let's chat. Let's figure out what's next in your leadership journey. Remember, you don't need a new voice. You just need to trust it and use it where it counts. See you next week, my friend.